I built this set of huge storage cabinets for my garage that feature adjustable shelves and soft close hinges, so I don't have to do this anymore. Now I can park in the garage, and that makes me happy. When designing the cabinets, I had several things I wanted to accomplish. Most of all, they needed to accommodate the items we wanted to store. I also wanted to size them in a way that left minimal waste from 4x8 sheet goods. And come on, they're garage cabinets. Please, no painting or finishing. I first designed them in SketchUp to plan out the build. There are 3 separate units installed together in a single bank. Each compartment is set up to fit adjustable shelves as needed. All parts are color-coded in the drawing, so I can virtually lay them out on a 4x8 foot sheet to plan out my cut list. This build will take 10 4x8 foot sheets in total. I have my 6 side panels here, 9 fixed dividers for the top, bottom, and middle, 6 back panels, adjustable shelves, and then top and bottom doors. I'll be using 3/4 inch black melamine for this build. It's not terribly expensive, it's nice and flat, and it doesn't need to be finished. To start the project, I stacked multiple sheets together to gang cut identical parts and speed up the process of breaking down all 10 sheets. To keep the sheets from sliding, I put double stick tape between each before making my cuts. Using my track saw, I used a similar cutting process for each set of parts. Starting with the long side panels, which need to be a final dimension of 96 by 24 inches, I start by making a straight edge from which everything else can be referenced. With a reference edge established, I squared one end to that edge using a TSO guide rail square attached to the track. I found that the guide rails gripped the melamine really well as long as I wiped the dust off between cuts. By doing this, I didn't need to use track clamps. Measuring from the freshly squared end, I made a mark at 96 inches, then placed my track on the mark to make the cut. Now you astute observers out there will realize that I registered my guide rail square off the rough edge instead of the reference edge. I didn't realize this when I initially made the cut, and I couldn't figure out why my measurements were off. I finally figured it out, but thankfully one end was right at 96 and the other was a little long, so I was able to flip the track around and fix the problem. With my 96 inch final length established, I'll attach my TSO parallel guides to cut the 24 inch widths. These parallel guides have adjustable stops, which I position at the desired dimension of 24 inches and make the final cuts. This parallel guide setup is not cheap, but man do I love having it for cutting sheet goods. I can consistently get precise and repeatable final dimensions straight from the track saw with no additional dimensioning needed. Next up is the back panels, which need to be 30 by 48 inches. After cutting the reference edge, I need to cut the sheet to a final width of 48 inches. These sheets were about 48.5 inches from the factory, so I had plenty of room to clean up both edges and leave a full 48 inches. However, my parallel guides are only 30 inches, so I had to make shop guides for this cut. They're certainly not as accurate as the real ones, but it worked for one cut. With the 48 inch width established, I can square one end of the panel and then use the parallel guides again to rip 30 inch widths. It was at this point that I realized I needed to put double stick tape where each part is located within the larger panel. Here I only taped the ends of the 4x8 sheet, so nothing was holding the middle section together. Good lesson learned as I go forward. The next 2 sheets will make the fixed dividers and adjustable shelves. With one corner squared, I cut off 30 inch sections. You'll notice here I placed tape under each section, but didn't take the backing off until I got to that cut. I found this to be much easier than trying to perfectly drop a full sheet on top of another without sticking to 18 different pieces of tape in the process before they were aligned. Next, I reset the stops and cut off the pieces, leaving a final size of 23¼ by 30 inches. Now I've obviously edited and sped up most of these clips, but I want to show you a cut in real time to demonstrate the true speed I'm advancing the saw through these cuts. I know things can look so fast and easy on YouTube that it can be frustrating when you get in your own shop and try it for yourself. Trust me, I've been there too. As with anything in life, it's important to set realistic expectations for yourself. Things rarely come out perfectly the first time you try it, but with a little practice, I have no doubt you will be getting perfect cuts too. As an example of what you can expect, it took me around 45 minutes start to finish to cut these 2 sheets down into 12 parts. The trade-off for not having to paint or finish is having to apply about 250 linear feet of edge banding. It's not necessarily a hard task, it just takes time. So again, set realistic expectations for yourself and turn on some good music. I start by putting the workpiece in the vise, lightly sand and vacuum the edge to leave a clean surface for the best adhesion. I am using iron-on melamine edge banding that I purchased on Amazon. I made a little dispenser to keep it contained, which worked very well. Once ironed, I use this roller to ensure good contact. Too much pressure here and you can squeeze out the adhesive, but you'll get a good feel for it after doing a few. Ends are trimmed flush, and then I use a razor scraper to flush up the edges. There isn't much to remove here as I'm using true 3/4 inch edge banding. So in this case, I prefer this simple razor blade holder rather than the edge banding cutter that came with the Fast Cap toolkit that I'm using here. I then break the edges with this sanding contraption, and that's all there is to it. Next up is holes in the side panels for the adjustable shelves. Using this jig from Rockler, it adjusts to the width of your panel. I position my jig and drill the first 2 holes, then place the pins that come with this jig to secure it in place as I drill the rest. In reality, I'll probably never need this much adjustability, but I guess it's easy insurance if I do need to move things around in the future. After drilling a set of holes in the bottom section of the cabinet, I repeat the same for the top end, allowing for adjustable shelves in both the top and bottom sections. Before I assemble the cabinet boxes, I need to make a base for them to sit on. I ripped down a bunch of pieces from the scraps that were left to 4 inches wide and assembled them using nails to pin parts in place, then screws to secure everything together. The sections where 2 cabinets come together got double spacers, so the tall side panel of each cabinet is fully supported across its full depth. With the base fully assembled, I set up a laser level and determine the highest point on the base. I secure that point to the wall using a single screw, so the rest of it can still move. Then I took a piece of scrap plywood and placed it on top of that point and made a mark at the laser line. I could then slide this block along the entire base and shim it up wherever needed, ensuring the whole thing is level. One last step before assembly is to strike a mark at 3/8 of an inch in from each edge where screws will be placed. This makes screw placement much easier during assembly, ensuring those screws will be in the middle of the adjacent 3/4 inch sheet. Assembly was somewhat difficult with the size of these cabinets. They would have been too big and heavy to assemble in the shop, so I did it on the floor in their final location in the garage. I held parts together with these corner brackets, but the floor slopes to a drain, so I still had to manually maneuver parts into place before tacking them with brad nails. When designing these cabinets, I did a lot of research on construction of melamine cabinets and found these screws called Conformat screws. I had never heard of them before, but all they are is a large diameter, coarse threaded screw designed specifically for max holding strength in melamine. With the top and bottom dividers secured in place, I cut spacers to allow for easy positioning of the fixed middle shelf. I pinned it in place and didn't even send a nail into my finger. If I could make a suggestion, maybe try holding your hand in a different spot when you build yours. Screws tied all together, and I can stand it up to install the back panels. You'll notice here the back panels don't meet at the middle shelf. That is on purpose, as the bottom section of the cabinet is slightly taller than the top to allow for a set of golf clubs to fit in the bottom cabinet. And I apologize for the video quality here. The extra LED lights that I have in my shop make a huge difference versus a few standard light bulbs on this side of the garage. There is an outlet on the wall where this section of cabinet goes, so I cut out a hole allowing it to be accessed through the cabinet. I roughed out the hole with a jigsaw, then using a template and some more double stick tape, I could clean up the opening with a flush trim bit, then chamfer the inside edge. Now I can wiggle this into place on the nicely leveled base. And look at that, it fits. Well, just barely. I apparently didn't quite measure this outlet opening right. The final section was assembled and installed, and I love it when a plan comes together and everything fits and aligns just perfectly. It's not shown here, but I did attach these cabinets to the studs in the walls behind using screws through the back panel, as they're so tall and heavy I didn't want them to tip over. Now I can finally get to work on the doors. Starting with a full 4x8 sheet, I cut parallel edges to the size of the final door height. I applied edge banding to those long edges and then again used the track saw with the parallel guides to cut them down to width. Since the doors get edge banding around all 4 edges, applying it to this one long edge first instead of each one separately saved a little bit of time. More edge banding on the last 2 edges, and then it's time for hinges. I love Blum's soft close concealed hinges, but I couldn't justify the price for garage cabinets, especially since I needed 36 hinges. So I took to Amazon and found these for about 30% of the price of Blum. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect, but I'm actually very impressed with them. Let's start by installing the mounting plates to the cabinets. I made this little jig so I didn't have to measure 72 different times for these plates. It references against the top and bottom for those 2 hinges, and aligns with a mark in the center of the opening for the middle hinge. A self-centering bit fits in the holes in the jig to drill the holes in the cabinet. With the mounting plates installed, I used a couple of pieces of scrap that are the same height as each door to make a template to drill the hinge cup holes. After making the templates and checking the fit, I can align the template with a door panel and transfer the center lines for each hinge location. Then using this Kreg concealed hinge jig, it aligns with the center mark, is clamped in place, and the holes can be drilled. For operations like this, it's nice having multiple drills set up with each bit needed rather than switching back and forth each time. And don't forget to drill the little screw holes on top. I can't tell you how many times I forgot that and had to clamp the jig back on and drill them. The final step is to drill holes for the handle hardware, and if you're feeling like every step in this build took special tools or jigs, I agree with you. It felt that way to me too, to be honest. I'm grateful to have accumulated a set of tools over time to make projects like this easier and more accurate. I know it all costs money, but I've invested in a nice set of tools to allow me to build cabinet type projects, and the beauty of a good tool is that it brings value to your projects for years to come. I was able to pack a ton of stuff into these cabinets in an organized fashion. You can see the golf clubs fit perfectly in the taller bottom section, and we found these totes that fit perfectly side by side to keep smaller items organized. I have to say it feels so good to know right where things are, and also to have a place to put them back when done using them.